listening to Cowboy Logic with Jason Forby, a message of grace and hope.
Everybody's good? Well, all right. One of the things that we learn is, like I said earlier, kind of coming out of this religious deal and getting away from that thing. Another thing that religion tries to do is push everything off into another time. It's like, like around here we believe in victory, right? We believe that it's the will of God for people to be healed, and so even the maddest religious people about that statement don't deny that it's the will of God for you to be healed sometime down the road, right? Over yonder, and so really it's kind of the object of religion to always say, oh yeah, that is, God's good, but not yet. Later on, another day. And so the trick is, if you always believe that it's for tomorrow, come on, tomorrow never shows up. Tomorrow's always tomorrow. And it's like, the things of God are not tomorrow. The things of God are today. It's like right now. It's now. If you believe in now, you live in now. If you believe in someday, someday's always someday. Come on, you got it? So, let me read a little. You guys all know this story. It's one of my favorites. I want to read it to you in the Mirror translation this morning, all right? This is the prodigal son. They call it the prodigal son. It's really not about a son. It's about a father. It's about a man that had two sons, right? That's the focus of the story. So you've surely heard the story, but I want to read it to you in the Mirror translations. Old Francois du Toit. We'll see what he says about it. All right, this is Luke 15. Everybody good? Luke 15. Start in verse 11. All right, listen to this. Verse 11. Then he continued. You can get a mirror on your phone if you got to get like an app. They have an app, the Mirror translation. I don't know. That's as far as get your kids to help you or something. Then he continued. This is Jesus telling this story, right? A certain man had two sons. The youngest approached his father and said, "Father, give me my share of our inheritance." So the father gave them his life. I like that. It says, so the father gave them his life. Within a few days, the young man had gathered all his belongings and left to a foreign country far away from home. There was nothing holding him back now, and he soon squandered his inheritance, living it up without any restraint. By now he exhausted his resources, and to make matters worse, a severe famine gripped that land. He began to be in dire need. So he journeyed further into the country and attached himself to a local citizen who sent him into his fields to shepherd his pigs. He was so desperately hungry that he was even craving to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were feeding on, but no one would allow him to. At this point, he came to his senses. Thinking out loud, he said, "My father has many hirelings working for him, and everyone has more than enough to eat. And here I am dying of hunger." He was up and ready to go and began to rehearse what he would do. "I will travel home to face my father and tell him that I have sinned against heaven and before him. I will convince him that I am no longer worthy to be called his son. I will convince him that I am no longer worthy to be called his son, and beg him to employ me as one of his hired servants." And with that, he got up and he began the return journey to his father. He was yet a long way from home when his father saw him, and filled with compassion, ran to his son, flung his arms around his neck, and kissed him fondly. When the son caught his breath, he began his rehearsed sinner's prayer. When the son caught his breath, he began his rehearsed sinner's prayer. "Father, I have sinned before heaven and in your face. I am not worthy to be known as your son." The father wasn't paying any attention to this and didn't give him a chance to even finish his rehearsed plea. He merely instructed his slaves to immediately bring out the best robe and clothe him in it, and gave him a ring to put on his finger and shoes for his feet. In full anticipation for his son's return, he now also had the grain-fattened calf brought and slaughtered. It was party time. So with our minds flooded with joy, let the merry celebration begin. This is the reason for our joy. My son here was dead, and he was revived. He seemed to be lost forever, but here he is, found. And so they began their merry celebrations. The older brother was returning from the field, and approaching the house, he heard what sounded like a concert of instruments and a choir of voices singing and dancing. Alarmed, he called one of the boy's servants and asked him, "What was this all about?" The boy answered, "Your brother's here. So your father sacrificed the grain-fattened calf to celebrate, and your brother returning home in good health." The news enraged the older brother, who had no desire to join them. Then his father went out and pleaded with him. He answered his father, "Consider the many years that I have toiled for you like a slave, and at no time did I ever dodge any of your commandments. At no time did I ever dodge any of your commandments. Yet you never considered rewarding me even with a little lamb so I could party with my friends. However, when this son of yours comes here, having devoured your savings by wasting it on prostitutes, you slay the grain-fatted calf?" He said to him, "My dear child, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. To now have our minds flooded with merriness and exceeding joy is fitting, because your brother was dead, and he is alive again. He was lost, and is now found." Everybody good? So Jesus is telling a story. One of the things Jesus is doing, one of the biggest things Jesus is doing, is he's coming to kind of straighten our idea of what God's like, right? So he's telling a story. He's really telling his story to a bunch of religious folks, the church folk of the day. He's saying, look, you've had an idea of what you think the Father's like, but I've come to explain and reveal what he's really like, right? So I heard a story one time that really, it's been one of my favorite stories, and it's really been a huge impact to me. And if I remembered who it was that told the story, I would sure enough give him credit, but it's been too long and I can't remember. But this guy, he was telling a story about his wife, and his wife was like crazy ate up, maybe almost as bad as my wife. She loved dogs. I mean, like, this lady was ate up with dogs. It was like her biggest passion, that it was her lifelong goal to make sure all of the suffering for every dog that ever walked to be over with, right? He would say she would do without herself. He didn't even want to know how much money that she'd be spending on dogs. He said that whenever people in town wanted to get rid of their dog, and the distance that they would drive out of town into the country to feel like that was enough distance to dump their dog, right? It was the same distance to our driveway. They always got dumped right there. And, of course, she would just take them in and do what she could do. She would nurse them to health. She would feed them, take care of them, bathe them. She would find them homes. She would just do whatever she could do to care for these dogs, right? She just couldn't stand to see them suffer, about like my oldest daughter probably. She would run over you with a car to get to a dog. One time he said he was somewhere and there were a bunch of people, and one of them guys said, "Man, my wife treats me like a dog. Does your wife treat you like a dog?" He said, "Man, I wish." This lady dog crazy. And then he says sometime he was watching this go on and on, for all this time, and then he said, I started to notice that not all the dogs got the same treatment. Not all the dogs got the same treatment. Like, some dogs would come in there and they'd just be friendly little old dogs and just happy to see everybody, and she'd take them right on in the house, and they'd just be living the best life, getting flea baths and belly rubs and pork chops right off the table. It's like them dogs. But then there'd be some dogs that weren't so friendly and had been abused or full of anxiety and fear, and wouldn't even let her get close to them, and they'd lay out there under the bush, right, and stay away and be from a distance. And even as good as she was, she took the responsibility upon herself to deal with their anxieties and their fears. And like she'd sneak out there and give them clean water when they weren't looking, or might even throw a pork chop from around behind the house. She was doing everything that she can to overcome their fears and to convince them that her intentions for them were good. And so it would say that the thing that some of those dogs had been through previously before they had gotten there, they were forming their opinion of her intentions based on what it is that they'd been through before. Come on, are you following me? Like they might have been abused before. They might have got kicked by their owner every time they walked by. And so here they come along and they've formed their opinion of who she is and her intentions based on what they've experienced in life, instead of a true assessment of her heart for them. That she's full of kindness and full of goodness and full of love for them and wants to provide for them. But they're doing without that because their opinion or their... Come on, are you seeing what I'm saying? They're laying out there under the bush, not getting the true experience of what she has intended for them because their opinion of her is formed on what they've experienced previously. And she'd just work. He said she would work. She would do everything she could, no matter how long it took. Every day, all the time, she would work to prove herself to them. She took the responsibility upon herself. She would do anything she could do to try to win these dogs over and to care for them. And come on, it's like, man, I can see that so much in our own perceptions of God. It's like, how many, we could say, well, we believe in God's good, right? We believe in the kindness of God, that He's really good. But because we've had so many messed up opinions of what He's like, that some of us might be laying out under the bush, snarling, doing without, thinking, well, I'm good dogs up there in the house. When it's not the will of God. I mean, it's the will of God for all of us to be right in there in the house, getting all of the good, all of the pork chops we can eat, all of the flea baths we can stand, all of the belly rubs, all of the getting nursed back to health, receiving strength, getting the food that we need, the medication that we need to be nursed back to health. That's the will of God. That's the reason Jesus came. Hey, all you knucklehead, flea-scratching dogs out there, your opinion's wrong. It's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to explain to them? Well, I guess I'll just have to become a dog myself so that I can get out there and they'll listen to me and say, hey, you're wrong about her. Come on, in the house. You formed your opinion based on life, and that's just not really who He is. Come on, do I have the right bunch here? So He's saying, look, we've had all kinds of opinions of God, and that's influenced our interactions with Him and our life with Him and what we've received from Him. And not everybody's receiving the same treatment. Why is that? It bothers me. Not everybody's receiving the same treatment. But Jesus is telling the story, right? The prodigal son. It's like it's the Father's will for the boy to have his inheritance now. We think it's like, well, he's bad deal. What's the Father doing? Why is He insulting? No, Jesus is telling a story to reveal the Father's heart, who the Father really is, how the Father really is. What does He do? The Son comes to him, says, I just soon have my inheritance now. And He's like, all right, gives it to him. He didn't say, well, now, no, that's for later on, after I'm gone. I got to die and all this before you really get an inheritance. No, He didn't say that. He said, regardless of your heart, regardless of what you're going to do with it, regardless if you're going to squander it or not, it's the Father's intention for you to have everything in all of His life and everything right now. Come on, the older brother come along grumbling about it, right? And said, well, I've been slaving for you all these years thinking I might get something eventually. Father says again, everything that I have has always been yours. Come on in the house and party. Fatted calf, man. Brisket. All right. Yeah, everybody's good. So here's what I just got this prayer. All right, I just got this prayer. This is my prayer. The same as the woman. She took the responsibility upon herself to say, yeah, I realize they've been hurt. Now I realize they've formed opinions of me that are not true and not based on who I really am. But I'll take the responsibility upon myself to do the work. I'll keep luring them in. I'll keep throwing them a bone. I'll keep putting out water for them. Because if they could just experience who I really am, then they'll be healed. Then they'll be restored. Then they'll be strengthened. Then they'll live life and find out what a life being loved is all about. Come on, you with me? That's just good stuff. It's like, Paul said it in Romans 2, I think it's 4. He said, do you not know, do you not realize that it's the kindness of God that leads man to repentance? Come on, cowboy version. Do you not realize that your religious selves have been forming opinions of God the whole time, not knowing that if you'll just throw away all the qualifications and all the opinions and all the wrong ideas that are based on things other than the God that Jesus revealed? Do you not know that it's the kindness of God that provides the power for us to experience life and to change and to have a new mindset and a new way of thinking? In other ways, you could define repentance as this: getting a clear vision of who God really is and what God's really like. I'm just saying, man, it'd be an awful shame to live life out under the bush, snarling, doing without, licking your wounds, saying God's only good to a few. Live life out there and doing without and saying, man, let's just come on in the house. Put some gravy on that pork chop and live it up and say, man, oh man, this is good. All right, so it's my prayer. Here's my prayer, all right? I just said all this to say that this is about our prayer. This is our prayer. We're putting the responsibility on God. Come on, you with me? We're putting the responsibility on God. Say, you know everything we've been through. You know where we've come from. You know what our history is. You know what we've been taught. Well, you might have been this denomination. You might have been that denomination. And this one said that. That one said that. He understands all that. He knows where we come from. He knows who drove up and kicked us out of the car. Come on, y'all ever been kicked out of somewhere? Thank God. I thought that was bad, but boy, it was really good. Come on, He knows all of that. Knows all of the history, knows all of the hurts, knows all of the opinions and all of the things that have kept us. Not even my responsibility. It's not our responsibility. It's not put on us to say, well, you better get up and figure out who God is. No. You just lay there with your hurt, messed up self, and let the one that loves you get closer and closer every day, bringing fresh water, throw you pork chop here or there. Let's say, all right, I hear you, maybe. Let's just say this. If you really are good, you really are trustworthy, and you really have good intentions for me, then I'll at least look your way and allow you the privilege to prove it to me. Come on, can we have that much of a crack? They say you have good intentions. They say you really care about me. They say you really are kind. Prove it. I'll get my hard-headed self out of the way just enough to say, all right, prove it. I'll at least look your way. Fair enough? Is that a cool prayer or not? Come on. If it's not true, didn't cost us nothing. Still keep living under the bush, I guess. But if it is, it's a good life. I'm telling you, it's not about life one day. It's about now. It's about life now. Jesus came that we might know God now, that His true nature might be revealed now, that you might live life with God now. Come on, it's religion to say, well, someday. No, faith is not someday. Faith is, come on, now faith is. It says in Hebrews, right? Judy, what did David say? What did he say? He looked right at the giant and said, this day right here. Not someday, not maybe next Tuesday. This day right here. The buzzards are going to be fat because I'm fixing to feed you and your whole army to the fowl of the air. Right? Come on, it's like this day right here. I'll say, you know what? I'm tired of living under the bush. Tired of snarling, being mad at every other dog that fight each other. Come on, there's plenty in the house. Let's just go in the house. You want to? All right, everybody's good? If you want in on the prayer, say, I do. All right, here we go.
Please follow and share this message. And for more information, visit srcowboychurch.com.